Hi, everybody. My name is Orlando Bailey. I serve as the Director of Engagement for Bridge Detroit.
I'm Bryce Huffman. I am a reporter and producer here at Bridge Detroit.
And I'm Olivia Lewis. I'm a reporter and editor at Bridge Detroit.
So, we all wanted to have a conversation about different things that are going on in the country and what it's like to be a young Black journalist, especially a young Black journalist in Detroit, while all of this is happening. All of us live here, obviously, and work here. And as everyone knows, there have been widespread protests all across the country and even in different countries about the police killings of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor, along with a lot of different protests about racial injustice in general, including the death of Ahmaud Arbery. So I guess we should just start off with the first question. What's it been like to be a young Black journalist at a time like this when everyone is talking about race and racism and white supremacy?
So I want to first go back because when I was earlier in my career, I was writing about race and racism, specifically at the time when Trayvon Martin was killed. And so this just seems very similar to that time. I think the only difference is that more people are talking about it. Like, I feel like we're telling the same stories, having the same conversations. We're just having them with more people now. I feel like the story itself hasn't changed. So it doesn't feel that different to me.
I guess for me, this is my first time as a journalist doing journalism work and not community work when something like this has happened. And I would say the layers of seeing this as a Black person, seeing these brutal killings of Black people as a Black person, and digesting that and internalizing that and feeling the grief and the sadness from that while operating in this duality of having to put words to it and to put words to this experience can sometimes be a little taxing and a little overwhelming because I think we forget sometimes to acknowledge the humanity in each person, and we may not always be ready to put words to something, and that's the business, right? So it's been sometimes difficult and taxing. And the other difficult thing, even if you're not a Black journalist, but you're a Black employee, right? There's a duality there now because you are now being looked to provide some contextual layers as to how the Black community is doing, or even drafting statements that companies have been putting out, some of which seem authentic and some of which seems a little performative, but you know, it's a crazy time.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up just the exhaustion aspect and just like not always having the words to put to our feelings and put to what we're feeling. I feel like I am at a point where I've been talking about race and racism and police violence for so many years now as a journalist that I almost feel like, maybe not numb to it, but I feel like everyone should have already been at this exhausted point. It was, I was in college when the Mike Brown shooting happened, when Eric Gardner were killed. And like Olivia said, we've been having those same conversations. We've been having the same stories told over and over again. And I think I'm at a point where I, as a journalist, can only write the same story so many times and can only tell the same set of facts so many times. And I'm starting to like lose patience with the audience that isn't keeping up with this. And that's not everyone in the audience, obviously. But I think as a journalist, I feel almost like, wow, we've been having these same discussions. Why is it that we are acting brand new to it every time it crops up?
And is it a form of, like false validation? Now it's your time. This is your time to, shine and, show us what you're made of and, deliver on reporting. It's when our excellence and validation should have come long before issues of race began to permeate in this country or boil up in the way that it has before. Like, it's annoying.
Yeah.
It is incredibly annoying to have to keep telling these stories that it's happening again and again and again. And it doesn't seem like it's being understood for years and years at a time. Like, these are not new issues. It's just that we're having to continue to tell this story and the reaction is the same every time.
Yeah. So I know you worked at the Battle Creek Inquirer. I don't remember what other newspaper you had been at. I think it was Indianapolis, correct?
Yeah, the Indianapolis Star.
Yeah. And I, was recently at Michigan Radio. Do you think working at a predominantly Black newsroom has changed your view of like what our role as journalists are? Because I know for me, I'm at a point where I definitely feel like maybe we don't need to be activists per se, but our reporting we shouldn't be forced to tell the two sides of the story. There's the police keep killing unarmed Black people, whether or not they committed a crime. And then the other side of that is whatever it is that law enforcement says to their officers. But, I think I've been really starting to rethink how journalists use this code of objectivity, because a lot of the times we use that as like an excuse to not just say things as plainly as they are.
Yeah. I don't think that my role as a storyteller has changed. I think that my capacity as a storyteller has changed. And so I feel like I have a lot more ground to work with, that I can tell more stories that are relatable, are relevant, are important, that are necessary to the community. And especially, I think it also matters that we're based in Detroit, but other newsrooms that I've worked in, if I've pitched a story that was about race or racism or had anything to do with any of the isms, it made some of my coworkers uncomfortable. I remember writing a story once where I included the words white supremacy, and my editor took it out of the story. Like, we had a conversation about what including white supremacy in my story would mean, and for our readers at the time. And so I don't have to have that conversation with BridgeDetroit. I know that I don't have to have that conversation. And it's also like a different time now where it's more widely accepted, where you can write white supremacy and not, I guess, be as cautious around the phrase, but like acknowledging that, yes, this is a thing that exists. Like, I felt like I had to fight to include it in my reporting before, whereas now I don't have to do that. So it's just expanded the, I guess, the opportunity for the stories that we can tell.
Bryce, to your point about objectivity, journalists or editors hiding behind the cloak of objectivity, I believe is a double standard. I think there's a double standard on objectivity, especially when we began to cover sensitive topics like racism in America. And the way that you framed it, I thought was brilliant, and said, instead of saying what is emphatic, you have to sort of skirt around it, and in the name of objectivity. And I think it's a double standard because I'm watching how other publications and white journalists are covering this versus how BridgeDetroit is choosing to cover it. We all come with a level of bias, if you will. And I think white journalists get away more often than we're able to get away with that bias showing up in reporting.
I definitely agree with that. One time we were having a discussion at a programming meeting at Michigan Radio, and we were someone got in trouble for tweeting something. I don't remember what the tweet was, but our boss was basically talking to us about how we should watch our social media presence. And I thought before this conversation happened that I was going to agree with what my boss said. We're having the conversation, and I'm starting to realize more and more that the way we use objectivity is about how other people perceive us, not about what our actual reporting says or what our story says. And I realized that I don't have the option to be fully objective in the public's view because I'm a young Black guy. People are going to assume how I feel about an issue long before I ever actually speak about it. And therefore, the whole idea of objectivity then falls on itself because at that point, the public will never perceive me as objective if I'm talking about race. And it's like, does that mean Black journalists can't talk about race? Does that mean we can't do stories about police killings because we inherently have more skin in the game? And that's a question that newsrooms, unlike ours, newsrooms that are predominantly white, are still going to have to grapple with. As where I feel like whenever we've talked about race and racism, everyone's been on the same page,
Yeah.
I feel like that applies to so many things. Like we can't write about anything that might be a touchy subject. Like I remember once going to a meeting about, it was like a gun owners meeting, and there was some policy at the time that they were thinking about changing. I don't remember exactly, but I was the only Black person in the room during the meeting. And then I remember going back, writing my story, and after it got published, one of the women from the meeting emailed me and was like, Olivia, I can't believe you wrote such a strong story. I can't believe that there was no bias in there, as you coming in and just being so different from us. I thought for sure you would have an opinion and it was going to show up in the story. And that was like the most condescending thing I've ever heard about my writing. I was like, oh my God. Like she had completely judged me and who I was as a person just on what I looked like.
It's disgraceful. And, I think objectivity is used as a weapon to effectively silence Black voice in Black journalism. And it's definitely, something that I am just interrogating, period. Working for a media organization, and we're talking about delivering information that is for the public good. We of course want to be fair, we want to be factual, but who wrote the rules on objectivity? Was it some old white person? You know what I mean? Like, have we learned the white supremacist way to do these kinds of professions? Like, I'm interrogating all of it. Like, who said that was the right and only way? You know what I'm saying? Especially as humans, bringing our own biases to whatever it is that we're covering.
One last note about objectivity before we move on, but it's funny you mentioned who wrote the rules on that. The earliest newspapers were not at all objective, and they were not pretending to be objective. They were very biased. They very plainly stated what their goal was, what their message was, what they stood for. And the public, their audience, didn't expect anything other than that from them. We really don't see this push for objectivity in media until, the start of the 20th century. And by then, it was white male journalists in these newsrooms. It wasn't people like us being able to tell our own story. And that brings me to our next question. We've all worked alongside white folks before. I went to school with a lot of white people in high school and in college. How have your white friends and colleagues responded to everything that's going
on? I'm gonna let Orlando go first.
Olivia, that chuckled.
That was very telling.
It was very telling. I think out of genuine concern for my mental health and like physical life well-being, that I've received maybe about 14 or 15 messages from white friends and former colleagues or college classmates reach out, wanting to talk, wanting to know what they can do, apologizing. Like there's been so much white guilt that has been thrown my way. And like, how can I help? Who can I write a check to? Kind of conversation. And when it first started happening, I was very curt and short because just processing what was going on and what had happened to George Floyd while actively trying to stay away from seeing the video because the level of trauma that induces. But I guess I'm on a spectrum. I know Black people are on a spectrum in how they respond to white folks. So I'm the guy that's like, let's talk. Yes, this is what you need to be. Here's what you need to read. Here's how you can get involved. Here's how you can write a check to, albeit exhausting. I think if you reaching out and you genuinely want to know, I'll give you genuine answers. I can sort of depending on who sends it, I can sort of sift through like who's just sending it because, and then that person doesn't, get a response. But I'm the Black person that's always willing to have that conversation. Like, yes, let's, here's who you can read. Here's what you need to, look up. And I know, and it doesn't, and I'm not saying that I'll always be in this space. But right now, and even for the last couple of years, I've been in this space of, yes, let's have this hard conversation. And, but I know that, my Black colleagues and co-laborers in this struggle vary in how they've been responding.
I don't know. I go back and forth with being annoyed and appreciating that they're recognizing that something is going on. And I haven't received, like a massive amount of texts. I think, most of the texts that I've received are from friends from, like close friends from high school, a couple from my graduate program. I went to HBCU for undergrad, so I didn't have any white friends who would connect me from there. And then one that I know from a professional network where we were actually involved in a training on how to talk about race and all the other isms within our community. And so we didn't work together, but we were put in the simulation and training together to kind of like how to have these difficult conversations as allies to one another. And so I would say her text I appreciated the most because she was the person that I expected to approach me and have this serious conversation because we were trained to do so with one another and like made this commitment that we would have this relationship and have these conversations, and like that has turned into a friendship over several years. So like it was a process for us to get there. And so hearing from her and having a discussion with her was really appreciative and helpful. But some of my other friends, the same kinds of thing where like I know that they're an ally in this work and that they have been trying to do their own learning and standing up where they know other people aren't waiting and watching and listening. And then there were others who were like, we have never had this conversation before. And I feel like you're reaching out to me just because you don't want to be that person who didn't reach out, and you think that I'm going to think some type of way about you after. And so those texts really annoyed me, because it's not that we aren't close friends. It's not that we don't talk about a lot of other serious issues, but we haven't had the conversation on race. So why is this the opportunity for you to do so? And what are you expecting from me? Like, I don't want to be the person who's going to be your teacher or your leader, or like be the one who's responding on any of your questions about Blackness. Like, you have to do your own homework too. Like, I can't be that voice. It has to be like, you have to be willing to go out and read and talk to other people and like figure things out for yourself. Like, I'll be there as your friend to be like, to have a conversation, but you're not at the point, you're not where I need you to be a true friend and ally in this movement.
Amen to all of this. Orlando, you said you've had about 14 or 15 people hit you up. As of this morning, I've had 34 of my white friends contact me. Oh my goodness. Yeah. I have a lot of white friends. I can't help it. I went to a Catholic high school, and then I went to Central Michigan, so I know a lot of white people. But, you know, at first, like Orlando was saying, I'm the guy who normally likes to have the conversation, because in my view, it is so much better to have the conversation with someone than to let them go on with whatever ignorant racist views they might have had before. So for the first like 5 or 6 people that hit me up, I was still in vacation mode because I hadn't started yet. But I was like, you know what? Once I start working, let's have this conversation. I'm still in chill mode, so I'm not really trying to talk about it right now. But when it got to like 8 or 9 or 10 people hitting me up, that was when I realized, okay, I'm gonna need to have like an actual response to all of this. And I think what I ended up doing was I waited a while to respond to a lot of folks. And when I did respond, I would always say, oh, cool, I appreciate you asking about me, because most of the time they would ask me how I'm doing before they ask what they can do. And when they ask what they can do, I would always say, you know, you can Google that. Google is your friend. You can watch some documentaries, you can read some books, or, you know, you can just listen to the Black people around you. We've been talking about this stuff, like as you pointed out, for such a long time that it's not like you're brand new to the idea that police shoot Black people in the street, right? Like, if you've lived in this country for more than 5 years, you've seen plenty of video of it. You've heard plenty of people talk about it, I'm sure. So when people continually hit me up, when it got to like 20, 25 people, I was just like, I'm going to make a Facebook status about it. And I'm going to let everyone know that I appreciate them. I really do care about y'all, and I want you to become better people. I want you to grow.
25 was your limit. I'm laughing at that. Oh, 20. Oh, this is enough.
What was the Facebook post? I need to know.
Oh, it's Facebook.
So I literally wrote, I don't have the quote in front of me, but it was something like, "Dear white people who want to be allies."
I'll find it. You guys just hold okay. Because it was epic. I want to read it verbatim because I'm gonna find it. It was.
I'll let you read it when you.
It was that. Listen, y'all. It was that good. I have to find it now because, man. Oh God.
I should have just screenshotted it and just like sent it to people once they hit me up. I'm like, I've already addressed this. Just refer to this little.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
So I'm getting there. Your Facebook wall had, okay, here we go. It had a lot of "I am a Black man" posts. The shit.
I know, a lot of smiling Black people. I love it.
It says, I'm gonna read this, okay? Right. Dear white friends who want to be allies, I love and appreciate y'all for checking in with me and the support you've collectively thrown my way. But can you please stop using me as an anti-racist Wikipedia? There are plenty of resources online for ways to deal with your white guilt and for talking about racism with other white people. If you want to help the cause, but don't want to deal with potentially violent protests, Start doing the little things like getting in your friend's face when they say the N word, even when there are no Black people around. Sincerely, your Black friend who you've talked to more this past week than in the past 4 years. Seriously, it's all love, but please stop hitting me up to talk about your feelings or racism. It's getting a little old at this point. I wanted to make sure I read every single word.
Wow, Bryce.
Yeah, so I want you to know it took me like 6 hours to write that. It took me a long time to like figure out the exact tone I wanted to have. Not because I was super afraid of offending my white friends, but because I wanted to accurately convey the wide array of messages I got. Some people hit me up literally and didn't ask how I was doing. They just wanted to know what they could do. And if you're watching this video and you were one of those people, that's why I didn't respond to your message on Facebook Messenger. I had some people who apologized for racist or insensitive things they said to me years ago, things that I did not remember at all. And I appreciate them for, you know, feeling like I was worthy of apologizing to, but at the end of the day, it's just like, I'm one Black person. I can't answer all this for you, especially not me being a Black person who is not the stereotypical Black person. Grew up going to private schools. I love hockey. My favorite music other than hip hop is metal. Like I can't be your token Black person because I am not the typical Black person. And because my experience has been so different, you know, I'm not going to have answers for you on how to solve certain problems.
I think that's important. And I also think that oftentimes, all too often, we are put in a position to speak for a group of people that is not a monolith,
Yes.
that is also very diverse, who sometimes can't agree on how to tackle issues, who dissent with each other. So it's, you know, trying to speak and be the mouthpiece for a broad, very nuanced group of people is exhausting because you can't speak for all of us.
Yeah. Nor would I want to, you know?
But I want to
and
challenge
it's
folks listening to this though to not to frame it a different way, right? Because I think white folks who hit us up about these things think that we are speaking for everybody. Even as crazy as it sounds to us, like I know folks think that way, and I want to challenge people to interrogate that kind of thinking. I'm sorry, Olivia, I cut you off.
No, you're fine. And so, you know, part of me, like I feel very torn about it because I really don't want to be that voice, and I don't want them to expect me to be that voice. But at the same time, I'm fearful of like, okay, if I don't respond or if I don't engage in this conversation with you, then somebody else within your network that is predominantly white is going to give you information that is totally incorrect. And then this cycle is just going to continue and continue. And we're going to be doing this over and over and over again. So it's just like, where is the line for, you know, me like participating in this conversation without like becoming exhausted and it weighing down on me as an individual versus you going out and reading whatever, getting some information that is totally incorrect or just pushes the movement back even farther. So it's just like where I feel like sometimes I don't know like how I should approach the conversation or you know, how to really express how I'm feeling. Sometimes I just feel stuck.
Yeah, one of my high school buddies, he's one of the white people who hit me up, but me and this guy we've talked a lot about race over the years. So when he hit me up, it didn't feel like he was one of the 34, even though he was one of the 34. And I told him one time, you know, when you have a question or when you want to talk to a Black person and you don't know if something is going to be racist or insensitive or not, just imagine what joke Dave Chappelle might make about you if you said that to him. And once I said that, I think it like clicked in his head, like, oh, okay. So yeah, that's like the scale that I use for people. It's just like, do you think that joke would offend you if you heard it? You know, that's just one way I've kind of been trying to get my white friends to think about the stuff that they're approaching me with. But also, like you said, Olivia, it's just exhausting. Like I had to move back to Detroit during a pandemic. I had to keep seeing and hearing people talk about police killings. And it's like, I just wanted to be on vacation and not think about the fact that it's never going to be equal for us. You know, like I wasn't trying to think about all these things. They just happened. And I think at a certain point, all of us need to like do what works for us and take care of ourselves. So I wanted to ask both of you, what is it that you have been doing to take care of yourself during all of this?
I would say I feel like I'm like clinging to my Black girlfriends like even more than before. And so like I've got several group chats going, and like we are usually like in pretty constant conversation with one another, but now it's like it's literally all day every day for the past 2 weeks. So we're just talking, and like I mentioned earlier, like some of my white girlfriends from school hit me up, and one of my group chats, like we all went to school together. So the Black girls from that same school and then the white girls who are texting us, like they're texting us all the same things. We're like, oh, did you get this text? Yeah, I got the text. It's like literally like word for word. And so we're like, was there like some secret white meeting that y'all had and said, oh, we definitely need to reach out to Olivia and this person and this person. And I'm just like, okay, like, and that's where it's like, it becomes frustrating. It's like, first of all, like, yes, I appreciate that you understand that there's an issue now, but it comes off completely fake when we're getting the same text across the board. It's like, you know, that we all know each other, that we're a small group. So it's not like we wouldn't talk about it. And so that's when it becomes more frustrating. And like talking to my Black girlfriends who just understand it are using their platforms. We're all using our platforms in different ways to discuss the topic and like figure out what's going on in the world, how to be helpful, how to support one another and others. And so I feel like they've been so incredibly supportive, like even laughing and joking about it, like sharing the frustration, sharing the sadness, like all of it. Like I don't have to come to the table with any reservations with them. And I think that's just been so incredible for just my mental space the past few weeks.
Yeah, I want to shout out Black women because you all carry a torch that continues to strengthen and uplift all of us, all of us. So, you know, just to submit what you're saying, group chat therapy is in full form on my phone. Keeping in contact with my friends, them checking in on me and me checking in on them. Real life therapy, listen, these images and having to work in news and sort of baptize ourselves in these stories over and over again can take a toll. And so I've upped my appointments to twice monthly instead of once a month with my therapist. So it's, you know, that and going for rides. So I have been struggling with, in walks, I've been struggling with my home space becoming my workspace. So working at home, sitting at my dining room table, before I know it, it'll be 9 and 10 o'clock and I've been sitting at that table for 12 hours and hadn't eaten a real decent meal or anything like that, because it's you're at home, you're not going anywhere, and it's now your workspace. And so your brain isn't alerted that, hey, Dodo, stop working, like go step away and do stuff. So for me, I've been going outside, walking, or getting in a car to send my brain signifiers to sort of, cut off and unplug and be to yourself and be with your thoughts. So um, that's been super helpful for me.
Yeah, I think I've been feeling a lot of that same work-home problem that you're talking about, Orlando. I just moved back here, and I'm living with my best friend. So, shout out to you, Asher. What we do is during my workday, I just take a few minutes to like vent to him about stuff, and then he'll vent to me while I'm sitting at the table working. And it always makes me feel like. No matter what's going on, at least there's someone who understands. And that's something that when I was younger, I didn't always feel that I had. I didn't always feel that there was going to be someone who was just going to get what I was feeling. So, for all of the friends of mine, Dante, Asher are the two that I've been hitting up the most, but others as well, obviously. We've just been able to just like collectively talk about things. And it helps me realize that even though I feel terrible about these videos and terrible about seeing police mace people in the face, there's other people out there who recognize that it's terrible, and other people who recognize the damage that's being done. So it just helps me feel like grounded into reality, to know that, okay, I'm not the only one who sees what's going on. But I also know that, when we do this work, we're not really allowed to ignore it the way a lot of other people are. I have friends who the only time they are talking about race and police violence is on the internet, because no one in their personal lives is going to talk to them about it. And for us, we don't really get that luxury. We are not only forced to talk about it, but think deeply about it, and think about it almost on a molecular level, in a very societal view of things. So if you're a young Black journalist out there watching this, reading the words that we write and reading our stories, I want to thank you for the work you do. I want you to know you're not alone. There are lots of other Black journalists who work in predominantly white spaces who understand exactly what you're going through. But I also want to challenge you to use your voice. If you're a Black person in a newsroom right now, they probably are going to try to make you the token Black person. I apologize for that. But use that voice. Speak up when you see something that you don't think is right. When you think you're covering something through the eyes of a white supremacist, say something. Do something about it. And that's really my last thought. Olivia, Orlando, do either of you have kind of a final thought that you want to offer?
Olivia. Go ahead, Olivia.
I shared similar sentiments. If you're a Black journalist in a newsroom, keep going. I know you're tired. I'm tired. We're all tired. Just keep going and know that your work is so important, and that, we have the opportunity to uplift voices that don't always get heard. And so I think that's so important as journalists, that we keep that in the forefront of our minds, and that we are making sure that voices are included, that voices are being heard, and that we're telling stories that represent everyone that lives in the community, not just people who subscribe. So.
Yeah, I would say I want to recognize the humanity in the Black journalists and honor that. I want to recognize and honor the duality of being Black and employed, but particularly being Black and employed in a newsroom, one of which, or many of which, are not being run by Black folks. I honor you for your strength to be able to do that. I also want to, like Bryce said, challenge you to use your voice and push the envelope on objectivity. Don't let objectivity sometimes is violent, and I think this is a time where we name that. So shout out to you, shout out to your work, shout out to the Black journalists at New York Times who said enough is enough. We see you, we honor you.
All right, I think that is all. Thank you all for watching, especially if you're white, because this must have been hella uncomfortable for you at some point. But thank you for your support, and until next time, peace.
Peace.